You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. thechrisvossshow.com. There you go. The old operatic singer. Let me get the full soundbite in here, and we're going to edit that first part out. There you go. We're playing with the new soundbite. We hired an opera singer to do the bit part I've been doing for 13 or so years, and there she is. So, as always, folks, the Chris Voss Show family is a family that loves you and doesn't judge you, at least not as harsh as your mother-in-law. But remember, hiring operatic singers for the Chris Voss Show is expensive. We just did that yesterday on Fiverr, and it costs like $5. So help us pay for it didn't cost $5. It was more than that, but help us pay for it with the guilting and shaming we always do at the beginning of the show with the plugs, but we try and make it funny. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, and Chris Voss 1 at the TikTok. As always, we have the most brilliant minds on the show. For 15 years, we bring you the billionaires, the CEOs, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the authors of all the great books, and what else? The White House advisors, the astronauts, you name it. We just always have smart people on the show. They're going to grow your mind, make you smarter, make you more beautiful, and hence you'll just walk around and people just see the Chris Voss Show glow that comes off of you. Today, we have another brilliant gentleman on the show. He's going to be sharing us his insights and everything that goes into what he has learned and what he's going to teach us today. We have Gregory Stern on the show. He's the Chief Foot Officer. Probably the first time we've had a Chief Foot Officer. Is it a CFO? Owner of this company called From the Ground Up Physiotherapy. He's going to be talking to us about some of what goes into his education, learning, coaching, things that he does to help people understand better about their lives. Greg Stern is the owner of From the Ground Up Physiotherapy. Did I say physiology? Yeah. Physiotherapy. There you go. And he's the creator of Rebuild Your Body from the Ground Up Mobility Program. After experiencing years of chronic pain and trying everything, he discovered unique methods that most healthcare professionals don't know. He helps people get to the root cause of their pain by taking a holistic approach. It teaches them how to get their entire body working together rather than simply focusing on the area of pain. His chief mission is to help guide people through their own path of self-discovery on their health journeys and guide people not only to be pain-free, but to strive in their everyday lives. Welcome to the show, Greg. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
There you go. The owner of From the Ground Up Physiotherapy. That's quite a title to have there in your business title.
Yes. Well, just a little play on words. We got to go with, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Foot Officer. And so, my whole journey is all about the foot and my own story of pain. And hence, the ground up mentality is one of our foundation affects our bodies, and everyone intuitively understands that when it comes to a building, the foundation of the building is the most important part. But when it comes to our feet, we don't give enough love to our feet. And of course, I help people with all sorts of issues, but so many times it comes back to how do they load their body and how does their foundation load? And that's kind of what I help people out with is this holistic approach of the body.
There you go. It's pretty interesting. I know that there's a lot of like chakra points. I think I've seen stuff on the feet, and we walk around these poor things all day long and abuse them, and we don't give them much love, I guess. So give us a 30,000 overview of what you do at your company and what you do for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I basically help people get to the root cause of their pain by teaching them how to move better. So when most people think of physical therapy or chiro or any sort of modality that's aimed for treatment to get out of pain, we often have like the patient will lie on the table and hope that their therapist is there to fix them. And while that sounds beautiful in nature and it feels good to be temporarily, to get that massage, to work on that area of pain, The problem is the moment you stand up from the table, you go back to the same movement patterns that got you into trouble in the first place.
Hmm.
So maybe for a couple of days you feel great, but then 2-3 days later or a week later, the pain comes back and you're back where you started, and you keep going through this merry-go-round wheel of temporary short-term solutions that never address the root cause. And the root cause usually is you're not moving well, and you got to move better, and you got to move differently, and teaching the whole body to work as a cohesive unit together, so that that area of pain can now, instead of being working all the time on its own, it's supported by the rest of the structures in the body. So people come in here claiming that they've tried everything, and then within weeks I'm getting people back to doing the things they love, because we're looking at a more holistic picture rather than just zoning in on the site of pain.
There you go. Now, when you say people come in there, do you have a business shop that
Yeah,
people
so I have
come?
a physical space in Montreal in Canada, but I also, as you're alluding to with your introduction, I've launched an online mobility program that teaches the exact same exercises that I do with my one-on-one clients, that I now teach online as well, to get my message across louder to more and more people throughout the whole world.
There you go. That's very interesting. It's something that more people need to think about, because certainly pain comes from something that we're likely doing wrong, or something that we're doing that's unhealthy. And it's kind of a signal to our brain going, hey, stupid, knock it off, you know?
Yeah, it's a call for help. That's what pain is. And so sometimes we
Mhm,
get very scared about pain, and the first thing we want to do is kill pain, right?
mhm.
Painkillers at every stop, every shop around the corner. You're throwing Advil, Tylenol, whatever, and it's immediate. But it's a adaptive evolutionary signal that's supposed to tell us something. Whatever you're doing right now, I don't like it. Help me out, please. And so it's important that we listen to pains in our body as opposed to just trying to kill them.
There you go. So give us your history. How did you get down the road? What was your journey that made you discover this and develop it?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, I was playing flag football in Montreal, and I had just an innocent ankle sprain.
Mm,
And for a while after the season, I would expect a couple months it'd be okay. And I had been a rambunctious kid, always getting injured, tons of broken bones, stitches, tons and tons of crazy accidents throughout my life. But I would take all of those over chronic pain. And that's kind of what happened, is
yeah.
that, you know, a broken bone, boom, it will, it sucks 6-8 weeks, but then you're back to normal. Or so you think, but in my case, this ankle sprain just dragged on. And so I was getting physical therapy. I was trying osteo. I was trying orthotics. I was trying orthopedic shoes. And my ankle pain and foot pain just lingered on. And I couldn't stand barefoot for more than 10 seconds without pain.
Oh,
I
wow.
couldn't do the things I loved anymore, because my whole body started to feel off. I was starting getting hip pain and back pain. And I was in a very desperate situation, and I didn't know what to do. And eventually I ended up getting surgery.
Oh, wow.
And the surgery didn't go the way I hoped for. You have this like image in your head of what surgery means. It's going to be like this aha moment where everything is just going to fix the moment after surgery. But as I mentioned, this ground up approach, my foot was in a mess. And so I started developing chronic pain in my hip and my back. And now,
Mhm,
before I only had chronic pain in my foot, but now I had all these issues.
mhm,
And it was only until I started to take a real deep dive into my body did I really start to make progress. So I was thinking about going into medicine when I was in university, and
mhm,
I ended up, pivoting paths and going to physical therapy. And beyond the classroom, I was attending seminars and workshops and starting to learn from people outside the confines of institutional education, because what I was finding, what I was learning in school was the same types of thing I was receiving for my ankle pain, just the hands-on, very isolated approaches. And I start to find the right mentors throughout the world, and slowly but surely chipped away and made progress. And now I'm at a point where I have no more pain. I go on hikes barefoot after not being
mhm,
able to stand barefoot for 10 seconds. I go barefoot hiking. I do slack lining. So, two trees and there's like a little rope between. I can
uh-huh.
walk that. I do lots of fun, cool things with my body. And now I share, the lessons and knowledge that I've accumulated along the way with my clients and my online clients, and through different education platforms online.
There you go. It's interesting to me. You were talking about how the foot pain turned into back pain, everything else, and I imagine that happens because you're trying to, you're maybe shifting your weight and standing differently, and that causes your back to get thrown out because you're something you walk
Yeah,
in,
your
whatever,
body's
you're
using different
trying to
strategies to
compensate.
accommodate. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Now, you mentioned one thing that's kind of interesting I found in your stuff is you're a total foot nerd
Hmm.
and you're a barefoot hiker.
Yes.
Tell us about that. That sounds I mean, do you go someplace that doesn't have big rocks or
Well, the thing is, right? So remember, I was coming from someone who literally needed orthotics to survive.
wow.
And that's one of the biggest fallacies that we have in the industry and like that we were sold about foot pain. So imagine you came to me with neck pain, okay? I'm like, all
Mhm.
right, I'm gonna give you this brace and I want you to come back to see me in a year. You'd be like, well, what do you mean? Like, I need to get more mobility. I need to, develop the strength. I need to work on it rather than just bracing it.
Mhm.
But for whatever reason, the logic we apply to our feet is a brace. So
Oh wow.
our feet are like trampoline. They're supposed to go down and go up. Think about like the foot flattens, and people hear the word flat feet, they think that's a bad thing. But our feet are supposed to flatten to accommodate the ground. They load, they spread out, they widen, absorb force, and then they
Mhm.
become very rigid and stiff and propel us forward.
Mhm.
But unless we honor both functions, we kind of dishonor how the foot is supposed to work. And so all the hiking boots, orthotics, think about Asics, New Balance, Nikes. You think about all the good brands that are out there, and what's happening is your rigid motion control, stability, all these fancy buzzword terms that you hear, you're basically preventing the foot from moving. And if you've ever been in a cast, after a few weeks in a cast, what happens? Your foot, the arm gets stiff in the case of a broken arm, and weak as well. And so our feet start to become weak and stiff. And so barefoot hiking was this journey that I went on of allowing my feet to start to feel the ground, work on uneven ground, and start
Ah.
to get stronger and move better as a result of actually just hundreds of thousands of years we've been barefoot. It's not as like it sounds crazy to many people like that hear it, but on the flip side, if we just think, wait a minute, haven't we always been doing that? Or our shoes that we used to have were just protection, but not imposing on our feet. And that's what's come about is that all the conventional footwear that we think about that is good because of all its fancy technology, it's basically yes, it protects our foot against, stabbing against glass on the floor here, but it's also now imposing on the foot. And so our feet start to change because they can no longer move well.
That makes sense. And we have been walking barefoot for thousands or millions and millennia of years and all that stuff. So, why change? But yeah, and the feet, to my understanding, they have a lot of chakra points, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So
I
like,
know, I
like
know
in
my
Chinese medicine,
masseuses
we
are
have
always into that.
reflexology and all that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my masseuses are into all that, and I know that when a masseuse gets a hold of your feet and does a really great job of hitting all those sore points, your eyes roll back in your head and your brain goes, "Ugh." And but sometimes it's painful, sometimes it feels really good. And I know that it's important, and we walk around our feet like all day long. I've got a foot massage thing here from one of the big foot massagers that we reviewed here at the house, and I get in every day. And man, there's sometimes I put my feet in that thing, and the muscles are just all pissed off at me and like, you idiot. And it can hurt, but by the time it gets done, it just feels so healthy and so good. So you recommend that your clients go barefoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You actually insist on it then.
Well, it's you were talking about like using a foot massager, but
Hmm.
nature has a natural foot massager. It's called
Huh.
uneven ground, and one of the problems is because we're always walking on flat, even ground, asphalt, concrete, cement, wooden floors. Everything is flat and even, but the whole idea of being on more uneven surfaces allows your foot to get its natural movement. But yes, I'm definitely a big proponent of either being barefoot or using what we'll call like natural footwear. So those are shoes that are much wider at the tips of the toes.
Hmm.
So instead of, when most people think again, Asics, we could all agree a high heeled shoe, very obvious. It's a triangle, right? That your foot is not the shape of a triangle. So they don't coincide together. But even if we look at a typical runner that most people wear, it's still not as wide as it needs to be. And
Hmm.
so what I would like someone to do is, there's lots of different companies that are out there. One, I don't have any sponsors to any of them, but the whole idea being that um, A wide foot allows your toes to spread. Just like you wouldn't wear mittens all day long, you wouldn't wear something that tapers your toes in or your fingers in. So
Mhm.
that's why I want people to be barefoot, is one, that their feet aren't squished. But then we also talked already about this element of flexibility. And so most of the shoes that are on the market are not flexible at all, versus I guess we are live. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So just to see if people are watching, like I could take a shoe and I should be able to completely bend it. You'll notice that this is a lot wider at the tips of the toes.
Mhm.
It's also flat from heel to toe, because when we're born, our heel and our toe are flat to the ground. But
Mhm.
all of a sudden, even a classic, think about a dress shoe, think about an Asics. Any of these shoes, they're slightly higher at the heel than the toe. And what does that do to our body? It pushes our body forward. And now all of a sudden, I need to crank at my back to prevent myself from falling over. So there's all sorts of things that are just impeding us from just being more grounded, connected, and having natural movement.
There you go. So for those of us in the audio on the podcast, you're taking the shoe from
Yeah,
front
and
to
it just
back and crushing
completely being able to
into
twist it
itself.
and bend it.
And if
Which
it can't do that, then that's bad.
Well, there's a caveat to all this in saying
Okay.
your podiatrist right now will disagree with what I'm saying.
Wow.
And guess what? My podiatrist, when I was in years and years of pain, told me you got to be in the most maximalist shoe possible. You need to be in orthotics. But
Wow.
explain to me why I could hike barefoot now. Because the foot changes just like any other structure. You want to get stronger biceps, you go to the gym. Well, if you want to get stronger feet, you have to use them. And again, all of this is about gradual exposure, because think about it. If you've been in something so like stiff for so long, it takes time and you have to ease into it. And a lot of the time I'm giving people different exercises that kind of facilitate this transition to a more natural shoe. But
Mhm.
ultimately, if you want to be the most natural human being possible and to thrive and be pain-free and have a resilient foundation that affects the rest of the body, you need to be in a shoe that lets your foot function like a foot. And most shoes that don't bend and twist, they're not letting your foot function like a foot.
There you go. Now, one of the other things you talk about is why posture is a very dirty word,
Yes.
and why learning to slouch will save your back. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So again, unconventional ways of approaching the body, but they're effective.
Mhm.
So how many times have you been told in your life to sit up straight, stand up straight, good posture, shoulders down and back, right?
Yep, by my mom every day.
By your mom, by your dad, by your teachers, by society, by everyone. Everyone thinks good posture means to be upright, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening, and we'll just do an example here. I want you to take your hands together right now and
Okay.
squeeze them together as hard as you can.
Okay.
So go for like 5-10 seconds and tell me, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Okay.
Okay.
Now, how do your hands feel right now?
They're
Tense
kind of
or
hurting.
relaxed?
Huh?
Tense or relaxed?
Very tense.
Okay, cool. Now relax. Now put your hands on your lower back
Okay.
and go ahead and sit up as like your mom told you, in that nice good posture. What happens to your lower back right there? Does it feel tense or relaxed?
I don't know.
So like usually, so just think about it this way. The way that most people upright themselves, really on the lower back, if you're really going to pop your chest up and go in good posture, squeeze your shoulder blades together, you're going to feel that your lower back muscles squeeze, right? They're engaged. They're not engaged right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm still waking up this morning, so my back and body is still a little sore.
Okay, no worries. But the point to make, and that most people will feel, is that when you're sitting up straight in this good posture, and I'm going to put that in quotation marks for a second, is that what we're doing is we're engaging our lower back muscles. And just like you didn't want to engage, if I ask you right now to squeeze your hands together for 10 seconds, you'll say, sure. Now I ask you to squeeze your hands together for the next 12 hours, you're going to say, screw off, like I'm not doing that. But that's kind of what we do when we go into good posture, right? We're squeezing our lower back muscles, and it's not what they want. Now think about, let's teleport ourselves to India for a second. I was there in 2014. Now I saw 80-year-olds being able to do an ass to grass squat, basically where they're able to sit with their heels flat on the floor and they could sit down. That's the natural way we're supposed to go to the washroom. It's also the natural resting posture of the human being, right? So if you think about, for thousands of years, we would sit around a campfire and we would be all like huddled around and we'd be able to round and be relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is, in that natural resting posture, we're not in good posture, so to say, according to the way that most people think about good posture. We're in relaxed posture. And so the problem is, everyone who thinks about good posture, all we're doing all the time is we're engaging these low back muscles 24/7 and doing the exact opposite of what's natural to the body, which is to is to relax it. So if we're in a deep squat, our low back is relaxed. When we should sit, we should be slouched and relaxed. We should allow our rib cage to come down so the low back muscles are not engaged 24/7.
There you go. It's one of those things with the back of trying to sit right and be comfortable, and but make sure that you don't end up. One of the things that I have in my family, we seem to all have, is we have this C back where we slouch way too much, and we if you look at us from the side, we do this. What do you think about stuff like that?
Well,
People that
yeah,
slouch
like
too
it's a
long.
good question because everyone says, "No, trust me, I'm already slouching." The thing is, like, there's nuance to this because most
Hmm.
people's low back is still engaged, but what
Hmm.
happens is that they end up slouching from the upper body. But if we allow the low, mid, and upper body to relax, that's kind of what we want when we're sitting. Like, yeah, there's a place for more upright posture, and I'm not saying demonizing one position, but the
Hmm.
problem is we have demonized one position. We think that slouching is bad and that good posture is good, and so everyone walks around all day long. I had a client the other day saying, and she's like 80 years old. She says, my trainer tells me to imagine my shoulder blades, that there's a wall behind me all the time. And so what does that do to the body? It just compresses the back side of the body all the time. If
Hmm.
we're squeezing, right, everything gets compressed back there. And usually pain is a result of something being, compressed too much, like all the time.
There you go.
So, so I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing that we sit in more relaxed postures. Uh,
Mhm.
but as long as we're able to tap into, doing some other things. But when it comes down to it, it's about the devil's in the details. Learn how to slouch through the entire body by almost exhaling fully, letting the ribs come down, and that allows our lower back to relax more comfortably.
There you go. So one of the things you talk about is, what role does victim mentality play in recovery? I thought this was very interesting because, there's some people that kind of go down a spiral of victimhood mentality, and sometimes you can't blame if you have cancer or something, or whatever. But I think with victimhood mentality, you don't feel empowered, and when you don't feel empowered, you sometimes can, I don't know, make your condition worse. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am definitely a big proponent of that because, again, if we look at the traditional model of therapy, it's like, I asked someone a question in my clinic, if I've got a magic wand, like,
Hmm.
what do you want to be able to do? And they say, fix me. Right. And so immediately they're taking the onus of responsibility and putting on the therapist, but it has to be the other way. Like, I'm there to be their guide. I'm there to show them things, but ultimately they need to take responsibility for their health. And so oftentimes, what kills me inside is when, doctors will say, like, how many times have we heard, like, the doctor said they'll never walk again. And what happens? They walk again.
Yeah.
So when we have this notion or this message that's so disempowering, like, you're never going to do that, there's two types of people. One of them goes like, screw you, like, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I can do it. And then the other side is like, your words are my reality. And so we, like, take on the words of the doctor. And so when we play a victim, we believe that we have no choice in the matter. There's nothing we could do about it. But healing is possible in anyone. I've helped years and years of chronic pain be reversed through proper movement. And you find the right coach that teaches you, that empowers you, and guides you along the way. 1% better is 1% better every day. But the cool thing is, oftentimes I'm showing people the exact opposite of these mind programs, like keeping their back straight all the time. And all of a sudden I teach them how to slouch and use their legs for the first time. Their legs start quivering like crazy, and like real nervous system changes are happening very quickly. And so pain can be changed like rather rapidly if done by the right, approach. And that's this whole idea. Like, the approach can't be back pain equals, let me just stare at the back. I got to look upstream and downstream so that everything can start to work together.
All right. That very interesting. That's some people don't think of this stuff in that ways. So basically, there was this show I saw. Let me pull it up here on the side. It was on Netflix, and it was called the Blue Zones thing. Did you
Yeah.
did you hear
Yeah.
about that?
I don't know about the show itself, but I know about the
Yeah.
blue zones.
And one of the people they found, they were basically a show about, this guy went and found the centurions that were living around the world in kind of group populations, and he was wondering why they were so centralized and why they were living these long, extended, healthy lives. And he went and studied them, And one of the places, the blue zones he found, were these people that are constant. They don't do exercise. They don't go to the gym,
Yeah.
but they're constantly moving their body.
Yeah.
And I think it was in Japan. And you know how the Japanese will sit on the floor,
Yes.
they'll cross their legs, and you're like, God, that seems. Don't you have a couch, eh? and but they'll do that. And he found that these people, and I think this has been found in other studies, people that move their bodies, their whole bodies, and move it in different ways, and they're moving it throughout the day when they do stuff, because they're in the fields doing the old style
Yeah.
farming, or
Yeah.
working in their shop, or they're constantly moving, as opposed to what we do, where we sit in front of a computer all day long. um, and they found that that's one of the factors to these centurions, where they live a long life, and their bodies are constantly moving, and they're constantly burning. They don't put on a weight either, because they're constantly burning calories doing everything they do to lead their lives.
Yeah, well, if you hear 75-year-old female or male found on the floor in North America, we think hip fracture. Like, we immediately associate, like, older person and floor, bad, right?
Mhm.
However, in their culture, you sleep on the floor your whole life. I don't know about everyone, but yes, I've been to Japan, and, like, the old school style is to sleep on the floor. So
Yeah.
every single day you're practicing standing up from the floor. But
Mhm.
for many people, they're like, I ask them, let's go to the floor. Oh, no, I don't go to the floor. It's like, what do you mean you don't go to the floor? And so it becomes this thing that it's like like it's, like, imagine you're standing on a bridge and you're looking down that bridge. Well, that's scary. But for people to look at the floor and think that's scary, that's like, that scares me, because it's just showing them, like, it's so unfamiliar. And when we sit on the floor, and, like, I'm a big proponent of sitting on the floor, because when we do sit on the floor, what happens is, after a few minutes, we get a signal that we're uncomfortable. And guess what? We change positions. But when
Mhm.
you're sitting in a $500, a nice chair, lazy boy, whatever, you're not going to move, because it's super comfortable. And the problem is, we sit our butts in two positions the whole entire day, and the shifting and moving is what we need. And so exactly, these blue zones, it's that constant, no, like, massive exercise, but the slow daily grind of gentle movement throughout the day and different shapes and positions. So that's the key, is that we expose our body to these shapes and positions to keep our body healthy and young.
There you go. And it's been found that people that keep moving throughout their day and their life, I need to do something to my chair or something, come up with something for the computer work that I'm always engaged in. But I try to get up a lot. I find that I have to get up a lot and do stuff, especially with my older age and what's going on with that. It's really important. Um, you talk about why freedom and movement, and why they're important to work together. Tell us what that means.
So do you mind repeating what you said?
Freedom and movement, and what do they have to do with each other?
Well, I guess, movement gives you freedom, and freedom gives you movement. It's like this idea
Ah,
that, instead of us, what do people want ultimately at the end of the day? Like, they want to close their eyes and think back to a time in their childhood where, like, they didn't have to think about their movement. There was no fear involved. And so the goal of the things that I do with people is to give them that sense of freedom again in their bodies. So I think that's really what I was getting after there, was this idea that we should just all be able to exude a sense of, playfulness in our bodies throughout our
mhm.
entire lives.
There you go. And movement is really important. You talk about the Japanese; they sleep on those little cots I've
Yeah.
seen, and which are very similar to like a yoga mat.
Yeah.
And you see people when they're doing yoga, they're basically moving the body, and it's kind of interesting how that seems to have a meditative approach of healing and making the body feel better. And people are like, well, I'm doing yoga, but it's the movement probably that is the big factor in there, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, we've always slept on the ground throughout the entire history of mankind, or, like,
Hmm.
you'd stack up some stuff, but it would still be a more firm surface. And then you
Hmm.
go to a hotel or whatever, and it's like the most soft mattress in the world where you sink in, and it feels good initially, but it's not what our body wants, because,
Yeah.
again, even this idea of, we talked about sitting and adjusting positions. When we sleep, our body should be moving as well a little bit. Again, it's happening unconsciously while we sleep. But if you're in something that's so sinky, then you basically can't move, because your body just, like, is stuck in that hole of the bed.
Mhm. I injured my back, years ago, and I started sleeping on the floor because if I didn't, I would end up, just like a pretzel, all messed up and
Yeah.
in pain. And so I started sleeping on the floor, and, I did that for years because it was just more comfortable. The other thing it would do is it would, like, could put pressure on my muscles and cause them to, break up, relax, and
Hmm.
stuff. Where with a soft bed,
Yeah.
it's a little bit harder to pull that off. And so I found that it would. I kept doing it for years after my back healed up, where it would just keep me aligned. I would feel more refreshed. It was almost kind of like a big massage where it would push on all my muscles, break them down, get them to relax, and just that hardness of the thing. And I would keep like a soft mat like the Japanese do, and that really helped me. It really worked well. Um, Let me ask you this: do you work with people that have? I know that people I know in my family have pre-diabetic sort of symptoms, and they've talked about, was it myopathy? It's
Neuropathy.
neuropathy, and it's a system where your feet have issues. Is there a way to heal from that, or a way to improve that for
Yeah,
people?
so I have a little quick story there. I
Mhm,
was dealing with a rabbi's wife. So you can imagine a rabbi's wife being more conservative in nature in the way that she dressed.
mhm.
And so she was always wearing socks in the house and always having her feet covered. And she was experiencing 3 years of foot numbness. And she
Wow.
went to doctors, neurologists, podiatrists, and they were all like doing all the tests and everything was coming back normal. And there was a local little thing about my clinic opening up and about me being the foot nerd, and so she came and made an appointment with me,
Mhm.
and I had her explain to her the concepts I was talking about before. Our feet have 20,000 nerve endings on the bottom of each foot, the
Oh,
same
wow.
number in our hands. Okay,
Mm,
now our hands are responsible for touching, fine motor skills, typing, whatever it is, attuning to the environment, right? They connect to what we manipulate, and our feet are the same exact thing. And the thing is, when we cover them with thick, cushiony footwear. So think about the Hokas, the Adidas Boost and the Air Max and all the things that we say. It feels like I'm walking on a cloud. Unfortunately, walking on a cloud is not what your body wants. It wants to be connected to the ground instead of floating.
mhm.
And so I just, I have this little spiky mat actually here. So I'll just,
It sounds like the same sort of principle of the mattress, if it's too
yeah. So you,
soft.
you might see this idea. There's little spikes here.
Huh.
So
Look at
it's
that.
called an acupressure mat. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I had her stand on this acupressure mat. And the first time she jumped like crazy because it was so intense for her. But after she came back on it and she used it a couple of days and she ended up buying one herself. And I had her wear toe spreaders. So,
Uh-huh.
the idea of like getting her toes to spread out more again. So the nerves could also have space.
Oh, wow.
2 weeks later, after 3 years, all her numbness was gone.
Really?
Two
Wow.
weeks. So all the doctors that I poked and prodded, simplicity is the answer. We talked to go barefoot. It's very obvious. Like nature produced amazing bodies that have the capacity to heal. And it's the use it or lose it principle. So, I mean, people with diabetes, like oftentimes, like there's a insulin resistance side to that. And so for sure, working on reducing refined carbohydrates and sugars to, properly attune your insulin resistance is a huge important factor in that. But also just getting your feet to feel again. I might be sensitive, but we need to desensitize our feet.
Mm,
So, like, if you had a blindfold on for the last 3 years, and I
mhm.
took your blindfold off the first time, like it would take you like an
Yeah.
hour to open up your eyes because you'd be so sensitive, right? Well, it's the same thing with our feet. Is that so many people? The only time they're ever barefoot is when they're on a beach. And then when they do go on the beach and they walk on a little stone, like, ooh, 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 they're walking very gingerly. But the key thing, if you go to other places in the world, rural villages, kids are playing out barefoot, running on
Yeah.
rocks and roots. And so that is the thriving state of the being, is to be connected. And so I would encourage anyone that has any sensitivity in their feet to go out and just like buy an acupressure mat, and just slowly desensitize the foot. Go in your backyard or go to a park and start walking around on the grass instead of thinking that like, I need to be in shoes all the time.
Yeah. That makes sense. I really like this, the acupressure mat.
Yeah.
Is there one that you recommend? I'm looking at several on Amazon
No,
that I
and
pulled up.
honestly, on Amazon, they're all pretty similar.
Are
All
they?
come from China. They're all just like pokey mats that you could just,
And then it looks like they have some that are for your back and your
yeah, you
neck,
could you
like
could
you
actually
lay on
lie
them.
in them on your back, and
Really?
you'll have some cool relief from that as well. Even
These
like
are
a neck
interesting.
pillow. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then you need one for your foot so that you
Well,
can do
the ones that for your back is you basically just stand on it.
oh, you just stand on it and do that.
Yeah,
This is really interesting. I never heard about this. I do. I've my masseuses back in the day. They would always tell me about hey, you need to make sure that you there's acupressure, and you would feel it. When they go in there
yeah.
and they hit those points, you're like, wow. But I've learned over the years that those pressure points need to get pushed through.
But it's not
Years
just the
ago,
pressure points, also the skin as well. That's an important point.
really.
Yeah, well, the skin is what is where all these nerve endings are located. So yeah, it feels good to get the deep massage, but ultimately we want to like desensitize the skin and the layers beneath that where all those nerve endings lie.
It's kind of funny. I'm looking at some of these and they look like torture devices from the medieval times. I'm looking at the little dudes. And I guess this explains, when I was young, you'd see those guys over in Japan or China that would sleep on the nail beds.
Yeah,
And you're like, that looks painful. And
that's
then
the whole other ball game.
and I imagine some of what is it, acupuncture probably does a little bit of the same thing.
Yeah.
And getting those muscles relaxed. Years ago, I used to go to this chiropractor all the time. My back was constantly out. I was under so much stress running 3 companies, and I was almost living at the chiropractor. And I would I would get in the car and I would start driving back to my office, and my back would just start seizing up again. And one day I just got pissed and I drove back to him and I go, I don't understand. You just worked on me, and I get 5 minutes down the road and my back's locked up again and needs to be adjusted. What is going on with me? Like, am I dying or whatever? And he goes, no. He goes, I probably shouldn't talk to you about this because you probably won't ever come back to see me again. He goes, but what you have is you have muscle issues. You don't have spinal issues like bone. He goes, you have muscle issues. And he goes, what your back is doing is your muscles are throwing your back out and they're pissed off. And he goes, the reason you have pain is because what happens with the muscle is the blood is going through the muscle and the muscle gets overseized. And so it's blocking the blood from going through there. And that's where your pain is coming from. And he goes, so here's what I want you to do, because you have these pressure points, that these muscles that are really being a problem for us. He goes, I want you to get a tennis ball and I want you to stand up against the wall, and wherever you're feeling the pain or that tightness of muscle, lean up against the wall and roll. You get really good at this after a while. It's hard to do at first, but you roll that ball around. And then he goes, anytime you find a pressure point, he goes, it's going to hurt like hell. It's really going to hurt like someone's stabbing. Sometimes it feels like someone's stabbing you. But just put the ball on there and put the pressure on the muscle. And he goes, what happens is you press on the muscle, and when you compress it, you're going to get the blood flow to start going through there, and then it's going to pop and release. And you know what? I never went back to a chiropractor ever again. It actually worked.
I definitely want to comment on that story if you don't mind.
Please do.
Well, the thing again, like as I was mentioning at the very beginning of our talk, was like, how does my approach differ from most other people? And like whether you're a physio, you're chiro, whatever it might be, adjustments, hands-on therapy, whatever active release technique that you went and got a course in and you have it next to your name. Those are all one tool in the toolbox. And like, your ball on your back is one tool in the toolbox. But the key thing of why like people that see me don't have to keep going back for adjustments is because we're getting to the root cause of the pain. And so why does your body go back into that, seize mode? Because it doesn't feel safe. And so you're just like cracking and, he's imposing his will on your body. And then your body's like, well, I don't want that. Like there's a reason I'm stiffening up. And unless you yourself guide your own nervous system through, safe, gentle movements to get you back to a place where you're comfortable moving again, that's only the time when it's going to finally learn to let up and relax. And so that's the thing, is that people go on this freaking treadmill or, conveyor belt of the same treatments over and over again. And they're like, oh, if I could just get that one crack, everything will be fixed. And that's how people think. And it becomes literally like crack cocaine, the way that people go to these, to chiros, like all the time I hear it. And the chiro takes an x-ray before and after like their treatments. But the reality is, if you take a look after their spine a year later, there's no such thing as a perfect spine alignment. It's more, how does your nervous system manage gravity? We're all against gravity. So we need to learn how to do things in standing. And so what I teach people is the exercises that I do with people, and I was mentioning the idea of shaking. I mimic the demands of real life. I teach people how to squat in very interesting ways, to hinge, to bend, to rotate, to side bend, to expose their body to 3 dimensions so their body is familiar with these things. Because as we mentioned, our lives are so, in front of the computer, one-dimensional. You go to the gym, it's squats, deadlifts, bench press. Everything is forwards and backwards. But ultimately, I need to go, I have to reach across the side. I hurt my back. It's because we're not exposing our body to these shapes the way that we talked about with, the blue zones. These guys are just doing natural movement throughout the day, bakes in 3D movement. And that's the key thing, is that we need to teach our body to move in 3D rather than just like hoping that like me doing some sort of like clamshell on the table or some, baby exercise that doesn't actually, mimic what life is like against gravity. That's the key thing.
There you go. That makes complete sense, man. And you do very rigid stuff. You don't sit here for sit in your computer desk for a while, and you go look over there, and you're like, oh man, I pulled my neck out. I shouldn't look over there. I should just stay rigid.
Avoid movements, right?
Yeah,
So
you avoid movement.
well. And so it's a vicious cycle, because like the less we move, and now we get hurt again, we move even less and even less. But the key thing is to introduce movement back, obviously in a safe way.
There you go. And it makes sense, because the reason it hurts is because you haven't moved that way in a while, and your muscle's like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you need to keep that open. So tell us how clients can onboard with you, utilize your service, get to know you better, and work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if anyone's listening in Montreal, you can come see me in person. But the key thing that I would encourage people to do is check out my program called Rebuild Your Body from the Ground Up, which is the exact same system of exercises that I use my clients on a daily basis. It's easy to perform, whether you're, a gym goer or someone who's just looking to get off the couch and feel good in their everyday life. It's all about using your whole body together. You could be a beginner or advanced, and it's in the comfort of your own home. The goal for me is to make it as easy as for people to follow. So it's like 15-minute daily commitment, but the results are incredible that you'll have, and you'll be able to feel like a kid again and move the way you want to move. And be able to do the activities that you love. So if you I guess like go in, my Instagram is Ground Up Physio, Facebook Ground Up Physio, everywhere you can find me is Ground Up Physio. That's the word ground up, and physio is PHYSIO. And my the links in the bio and all that jazz, and people could check it out. And if they have any questions, if they want to work one-on-one with me, I also do virtual consultations. So I've got clients all over the world as well that do one-on-one, and my program has options as well to have more tailored approach for people. So people could check that out if they want to. If they're sick and tired of the endless solutions that only provide them that temporary relief, that's where I come in, and it's the same thing that I needed to use when I was dealing with pain for my entire, for 6 years. I dealt with chronic pain for 6 years. I felt broken, unbalanced. So I know what it feels like. And I fortunate enough that this journey is certainly a blessing and a curse, because it was not fun. I was depressed for a long time, but now I started my own clinic. I love what I do every day, and I help people, get back to doing the things they love and light people up in really exciting ways. So it's extremely rewarding. And so if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that comes my way.
Well, you've educated me, man. I'm going to quit using all my arcing shoes and all this stuff. I'm probably going to start walking around the house barefoot again.
I could send you some, I encourage people. So there's very minimalist shoes. So if you think about the Vibram 5-finger shoes, so everyone's probably seen those before. They're like the shoes that literally have 5 toes in them. You ever seen those before?
Yeah, I've seen those where they have an individual slot for each toe.
Yeah, and those are, people say, "What do you think about them?" I say they're great. And I'm like, if you want to pick up any chicks with those, you're not likely to pick up any ladies or boys, whatever. But the cool thing is that there's a lot of new companies that do exist. One of them being the name Ultra, ALTRA. So instead of and what I like about the shoe for most people to start with is it's cushioned, flat, wide, and flexible. But because most people are used to the cushioning, it's somewhat easier versus something along these lines. This is a company called Vivo Barefoot, and these are extremely thin. As you can see, there's no
Oh,
sole.
wow.
And so they're like, for me, the thick soles are too much, but it's because I've made the transition and I'm so used to being barefoot all the time. Again, I couldn't stand barefoot for more than a few seconds. So I like, someone says, "Oh, it won't work for me." It's like, no, it will. You just have to, our feet change in response to load.
Yeah,
And
so you
our
got to let
bodies
them
change in response to load, but good
adjust.
load, right?
Mhm.
So, all these different foot companies exist. And so you don't have to only wear those 5-finger-toed shoes. If you want to like be more connected to the ground, there's lots of new companies that exist that are more cool. Yes, they will look slightly different, but being different is good because, it's, oh, those don't look normal. Well, guess what? Normal right now is unhealthy. Normal is overweight. Normal is in pain. And so we don't want to be normal. Be the weirdo who's not in pain. Be the weirdo who's different and who follows the natural principles of the way that we're supposed to move.
Be the weirdo, people.
Yeah,
What about sandals, like little Jesus type
yeah,
sandals?
so
They're really thin.
I don't have. Oh, yeah, I do have mine, but they're all at the other side of my clinic. But one of the problems that when people wear flip flops
Mhm.
is that they clench their toes when they walk. So you definitely don't
Ah.
want to be clenching because basically, if I'm walking unconsciously, if I'm gonna like walk normally, the flip flop will fall off my foot, and so
Yeah.
you have to clench your toes for it to not fall off, and hence the flop because it comes back up. It's like flip flop.
Ah. Flop, flop,
And
yeah.
so I'm definitely a bigger proponent of sandals, but again, more minimalist sandals. So like I wear these sandals that are super flexible. They're very thin. A company called Zero, Xero. Those are the sandals I like. There's Earth Runners. There's tons and tons of these minimalist brands of any, like even winter boots. So Montreal, like winter's approaching and it's getting a little colder outside. I have boots that literally feel like they're lighter than most people's shoes. They completely flex. So there's no excuse anymore. It's amazing how all these companies now exist that like provide, shoes for any type of purpose. So if you're a trail runner or whatever, activity you like, there are shoes for anything. And so a good shoe is a shoe that lets your foot move,
There
not
you go.
blocks movement.
There you go. What about the sandals that have my sandals have the band over the foot. I don't like this thing shoved up between my toes, the sandals. And so when I walk, I don't know if I clench because my arch
Usually
kind of
not if
holds
you
it
have
in.
a heel hook. Like again, you would want your heel to be like wrapped by a strap of some
Oh,
sort.
okay.
Like just like a
All right.
classic sandal, but I
All
like
right.
these more minimalist sandals. So if you
I'll wear
check
my
that
6-inch stilettos then.
out,
With the heel hook. Thank you very much, Greg, for coming on the show. Give us your .coms one more time for people as we go
yeah.
out.
So I would just suggest people going either like groundupphysio.com or Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at Ground Up Physio.
There you go. Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate Greg. It's been very insightful, and you've changed my mind and how I'm going to use my feet. I'm going to start using them.
Awesome. Love it.
There you go.
1 foot at a time, right?
1 foot at a time. I'll just put 1 foot forward, but I'm definitely going to change some of my patterns. Thanks for coming to my audience as well. Refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Give us a 5-star review on the iTunes. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Foss, youtube.com/Chris Foss, linkedin.com/Chris Foss, and Chris Foss 1 on the Chris Foss channels. Thanks for tuning in and be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.